there. One local author is proving that just because the start of life is rocky, it doesn't have to stay that way. Nothing's for Nothing is a memoir showing how childhood adversity and neglect transformed into a life of inspiring resiliency. Joining me now is the book's author, Rebekah Demirel. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you. I'm awesome.
You look like you're awesome. You kind of radiate some happiness, but growing up, not so fun. Can you kind of describe your childhood situation for us?
Yeah. So I grew up in a family where there was a lot of shame and a lot of abuse and sexual abuse. My mom left when I was 3, and I was left with my dad and my brother. And it was a very tough situation. A lot of things happened in front of me. My brother was sexually abused by my father, and it was as if I wasn't there. So yeah, it was very difficult for me. So I left home when I was 13 and lived on the streets.
How does that happen? You just left, ran away,
I just
basically.
left. Yeah, it was getting more and more difficult for me just to be in that environment, and you know, being 13 is an age where kids usually start to spread their wings a little bit, anyways. And I got hanging around with a rough crowd, and just decided, okay, I'm going to get out of here while I can.
And what was that like?
It was very tough. I grew up on the streets and in foster care, and in a lot of situations where I was in really dangerous places, and I used my body to find a place to stay and a meal, and yeah,
And
pretty tough.
Don't have another way. I mean, that's one of the things about youth homelessness that we need to understand. Was this here in Seattle?
This was in Vancouver, British Columbia.
Vancouver.
That's where I grew up.
What was the turning point in your life?
Oh, that's a great question. You know, I had a social worker that I encountered when I was 13, and I went to the first emergency shelter that I was at. And his name was John Turvey, and he started the first needle exchange program in Vancouver. And he was an advocate and a former heroin abuser and biker. So he became a social worker, and he was my savior. He was the person that stuck by me. And I always say to the people that I work with, all it takes is one person to believe in you, and you know, you can hold on to that. So
And to affirm your value when you're feeling very little of it.
Yeah.
Do you remember anything he did in particular or said in particular that stuck with you?
He was just always there, you know. I would be in and out of foster care and onto the streets, and at one point when I was 16 and there was no place else for me to go, he said, "Come and live with me and my girlfriend." So this was back in the day when
you could
know,
do that.
When you could do that sort of thing.
Yeah. It's always such a mystery, a human mystery, right? Where some people have an upbringing that seems to be pretty supportive and wonderful, and things go off the rails, and then other times stories like yours where it's almost incomprehensible, the kinds of things that you went through, and yet you found a way to be resilient and to build a better life.
Yeah.
Can you give me any idea what the ingredients of that are?
You know, all I can think of is when I was a young teen, I remember thinking to myself, I think I have a guardian angel. I think there's something looking out for me, and maybe that was me touching in. Yeah, that was me touching in with something in my spirit. And so that has sort of guided me, and I learned over time, you know, I learned to look within and touch base with how I was feeling, and writing too. I've always written. I kept a journal even when I was a tiny little kid, so writing has helped me a lot to be able to reflect back on, oh, is this what I believe? Is this what I think? And how do I see the world? How do I see myself in the world?
And somehow you guided yourself through with the help of somebody who believed in you.
Yeah.
So you're writing this book, telling us your story, which isn't always, you know, a fun thing to do, and I imagine writing it brought back memories and thoughts that are not pleasant.
Yeah.
But you want us to take away what?
I've written this book for myself, as you say, and it wasn't easy. It was a process for me to unfold and to unpack a lot of what had been held inside, and that was healing in itself. And I think that's part of what can really heal all of us. I believe that we're all on a healing journey, and that I'm still on a healing journey. And that knowing that nothing and no one is beyond redemption. So I just really believe when we check in with ourselves and we start to examine our thoughts and our feelings and our beliefs that we might project on the world, given what has happened to us, when we start to really examine that, then we can make sense of that and really start to see what's true and what may not be so true for us.
That idea of separating the truth from the not truth is so important, because you mentioned shame, which I think is the most toxic emotion there is.
Yeah.
And kids tend to think that if they feel that, that means they're not worth much. Whatever happened, they deserved it. Yeah. And somehow separating out what happens to you to who you are and what you're worth seems very central to what you're saying.
Yes, very much. And I say in the book too that what has happened to us and what we do with it are two different things too. And while I'm at it, I want to say that I'm a white person, and I have had the privilege of growing up as a white person, and so that racism is another trauma that is beyond something that I've experienced and that I know that people experience every day. And so I've had the privilege of being a white person growing up in a predominantly white society, and that's another way that I've been able to heal the way I have, but healing is also possible for all of us.
Such a good point, because we, as a society, we live on different difficulty settings, right? For some people, the difficulty is really ratcheted up, and if we can recognize that, we can start to unravel it. Thank you so much. This is a wonderful book, and it gives us all hope, and I think it can extend a real healing hand to others.
I sure hope so. Thank you. It's my pleasure.
We'll be right back.